What if your story could ignite a movement? At New Solutions Network, we merge truth, resilience, and reinvention, fueling shows that cut past the noise and light up what really matters: human potential. Police, athletes, survivors, incarcerated folks, visionaries, we bring raw, real voices the world needs to hear. Want to share your story? Want to sponsor change? Now is the time. New Solutions Network, unlocking the future, one voice at a time. Hi there, and welcome to another Natanya Experience. My guest today is a very, very brave, special, wonderful humanitarian in my book at heart. She is an educator. She's been working with people with special needs for many decades and has a really incredible story to tell about her personal transformation at one of our dear friends. Well, let's just call it magical reinvention places. And we're going to get into all of that, name it all, tell it all, share it all, and really hopefully help some other people who may be struggling find some opportunities that can help them as well. Welcome to the show, Robyn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, I've been a special educator for over 3 decades. Um, and I love it. I'm retired now from full-time public school commitment, but I was missing schools and children, so I started being a substitute in Boston Public Schools, which has been rewarding. So that's what I do. That's my specialty. I've remediated dozens and dozens of children with dyslexia and other reading difficulties, and that's my passion.
So, at a time when we see mass exodus from education, which isn't a shock for all the strains and stresses and lack of glory and all that, you were like, "I'm out, but I want to get back in," which is so beautiful to hear about. But even in that, what I just said, and that exodus is because there's a lot of pressures. Not just that you are only one thing, an educator, you're a human. You can tell us all the things about you, but or the qualifiers, if you will, but that life can be quite challenging and difficult and stressful, regardless of your occupation. But in that regard, especially as an advocate for those who might not be able to advocate for themselves, right? When you said for mediations, can you talk to us a little bit about maybe what was going on with you, and then we'll talk about how you found Mycelia and what happened there.
Well, I have what is called complex PTSD from many years and many incidents as a child and of abuse. I believe I took all of that and made it my career by helping students who may be going through something similar. But um, my parents died in 22 and 23, and I retired at the end of 23. And I finally felt like it was time, really my time. My daughter is grown on her own. A successful nurse manager, and it was time for me to do some things that I'd had on my list for a long time. When I was very young, when I was in my 20s, um, I experimented a little bit with mushrooms, and it was a pretty cool experience. So one of the things I thought about was doing a longer, more in-depth dive to do some more personal growth. Uh, and I believe that I found out about Mycelia through WhatsApp. I honestly don't even remember, but I spoke to Troy and I wasn't ready at the time, but he was really good about keeping in touch. And then I found I was ready at the beginning of last year, 2025. So I decided to go and do it.
Amazing. So I love that. You're like, I don't really know how, but somehow it came into my awareness in my WhatsApp world that there was a place called Mycelia in Jamaica, run by Troy Tennyson, right? And said that they offer healing for different kinds of personal, let's say, struggle, identity work, PTSD, obviously, and traumas. And so you're like, okay, I'm ready to work on this. The time is right. I'm just paraphrasing what you said, right?
Yeah.
And so okay, and you had and I'm not to age you or me because it's been a bit since I've been out of college too, but you did say you had some familiarity with psychedelic psilocybin.
Yeah.
I'm assuming psilocybin is what you're referring to, and,
Yes. Yes.
you were like, "Okay, I kind of feel like I know what it is, but I wanna go further," and what obviously, this is in a safe container with practitioners, trained healers, guided folks of all kinds who are, spend their life dedicated to help people make sure they have that experience as optimally as possible. So you met him, you had comfort, he waited a little, you came in, you said, "Okay, I'm going to go." Now you commit to go. What are you
Yes.
feeling? Are you anxious? Are you excited? Are you both? As one of my, heroes, Paul
I
Stamets, says, terrorific. Were you terrorificized?
I really believe that the pre-work, the prep work that I did with Mycelia, the workbook of working through what my goals were for going, what I might expect, what the whole process would be like, uh, journaling about it, was very, very helpful in preparing me.
So that's
Um,
important.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
there was a lot of intake for you
yes,
to prepare
yeah.
yourself and to prepare the team to be able to meet you with what you need.
Yes, safety has always been an issue in my life for again for various reasons. So in order to do this, I needed to feel safe and prepared, and I did.
Okay, amazing. When you were, if we can, just for a minute, I know this isn't the sexiest part. This isn't sexy science time, so that'll be for another show. But the sexiest part isn't always saying, well, what, so you did that homework. But I do want to lean into the homework or the intake, preparing you psychosocially, emotionally for what you were doing. But I wonder also, was it some of the first time you thought about those things, or did you feel like you were at that precipice of reflection? Because you know, we think about when you go to the doctor and you fill out the form about why are you here today, right? And they ask you your previous conditions. But this intake is quite different. And so I'm just wondering a little bit more details around when you were going through that and knowing that you're about to step on the verge of kind of essentially, right? Unbundling yourself from this reality.
Mhm.
What was that like? Did it bring up anything? Did it actually bring up some more traumatic things? Like, what was that like on that run up from while you were doing that before you actually got to the property?
Well, the issues that I wanted to work on, the ones that really felt were impacting me, became very clear. As I had said, my parents died, and my relationship with my mother and my daughter is complex. And I was still grieving, and I wasn't talking to my daughter, and so it was grief on multiple levels of losing my mother, of dealing with that relationship that was um, difficult, and then all of the ramifications of 3 generations of women, so or more. But so that was really important. That was one of the primary reasons. I was finding myself stuck in grief and needed to find a way to figure out what I'm gonna do next. I'm grateful that I am retired and I can do the things that I want. So one of the things I wanted to find out is what am I gonna do next? I find that healing, like, is never completely done. It's a process, and you go through different layers, and different things come up, and you work through those at the time. And I've done a number of things. I'm a second level Reiki practitioner, and I do Kundalini yoga. And um, I wanted to explore some deeper healing with doing this experience.
Amazing. So you go, Mycelia is in Jamaica, and you go
Mhm.
to the property, and we don't have
Plus,
to.
I'd never been to, excuse me for interrupting, but I had never been to Jamaica, and that
Right.
was
So
on
it was
my
like
list.
you're like, well, I'm gonna go to this beautiful place and have this incredible experience. I get it, right? And you weren't necessarily completely psilocybin naive, which, a lot of people are. And I think that's another thing. I love the fact that you're an educator and you're not, we talked about this before we recorded, something people think of like the psychonauts and the party people and the tech founders, and, that this is not a party moment. This was a healing journey with a specific key that unlocks that journey. And that key at this point is psilocybin. And that's how we were, approaching this.
And honestly, I think it was my daughter who got me thinking about it more currently to use
Oh,
as
wow.
healing. She was I had was microdosing and said that it really helped her anxiety, and anxiety is a deep theme between in my family. So I thought at some point maybe this is another reason to try this. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Now, you're in Jamaica, you've never been there before, it's beautiful, you're at Mycelia. We don't have enough time to break through every hour of the day, although I probably would love to do that on a separate interview, like a full immersion ethnography with you. But tell me a little bit about, let's just say, 2 things that you really didn't expect to get out of the experience, and 2 things that, well, let's just start with that. So, let's talk about 2 things that you didn't expect to get out of the experience because you went there with a specific purpose in mind, but I have a feeling there was some sort of added levels of awareness and even confidence or resolution within yourself and how you were gonna move forward once you left. Can you talk about some of those?
Um, sure. So one of the things I learned was the deep connectedness, particularly around the female experience, is like the eternal mother Earth, and the mother daughter energy that goes on for generations, and the pros and the cons, the difficulty and the love and the acceptance, and the it was able to I was able to understand a lot about the deeper dynamics. And I was able to release a lot of guilt and shame because of that. And then Dimitri is a profound healer. His guidance was what made the experience work for me. I think without him, it would have been uh, harder. He helped guide tremendously. And one thing that he saw, I will never forget this. One thing he saw was I saw a feather, and he interpreted it as writing. That I that that's something I should pursue, and it is something I've always wanted to do. So for him to see that was profound, and it's still sitting with me, and I'm still working with that. That was awesome. Um, there was also just a greater sense of self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, um, and a confidence walking into the future. I can't say all my anxiety went away. I'm still working with that daily, but I feel like I have a direction. I think a lot of people in my age bracket are ready to w- um, not pursue anything else, but I feel like as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to pursue my dreams. And so I really feel like Mycelia has helped me just know I can go forward and go forward confidently.
What a beautiful testimony, and to be clear, Robin is not being paid for this endorsement, and none of our guests are paid. We are bare bones. We are advocacy platform, so that this is her truth, and I'm really, really honored that you're willing to talk about this, talk about the use of psychedelics, talk about the use of, let's say, alternative, for lack of a better word, from the mainstream Western medical system of how to deal with some PTSD and trauma that you've been carrying, to go outside yourself in that way. The fact that you're talking about intergenerational trauma functionally lived, as well as maybe cellular experienced and carried. We see this sometimes in people in oncology at end of life, right? Where they talk about the oneness, the connection to everything, and how it helps them face their mortality. And so it's really interesting the way you described that sort of feminine Mother Earth, Gaia, interconnectedness with all women when you're currently moving through challenges in the female line in your family. And I think that's another testament to say these from the earth fungal or plant medicines across the board that are used appropriately have been used for generations, hundreds of thousands of years across cultures as sacred tools for awareness and connection to one another and to the earth. And so a lot of what we talk about and what our tools do at New Solutions Network too is about bringing you to yourself and others so we can just be a little gentler and move forward. We can't, none of these are magic erasers for our past. None of these are magic yellow brick roads for the future either. You still have to walk that walk. But like you said, you felt like you had more confidence, more groundedness, more peace, maybe with letting go of that shame and guilt that you spoke about to even take those steps. And if that's probably gonna get blasphemed for this, but if that's not a testimony against, SSRIs, just don't cut it. I don't know what else is, right? And that's what I'm passionate about too. So I'm so grateful that you articulated that, because I think people need to know that that possibility exists. And there's not one way to get there. Some people get there through different means, but this is one way that a lot of people have found profound shifts in how they experience this reality and how they wake up in the world. And like you said, you still have to manage your generalized anxiety disorder. You still have to take steps. But I wonder if your ability to believe in yourself, in your worthiness, in your ability to shift a state from that experience at Mycelia helps that anxiety reset as well in a subtle way, perhaps. Does I don't know, but I wonder if it sort of gives you a little more confidence as you move through tackling things.
I think what it helps me do is come back to awareness, um, and that's the first step. I y y when I'm spiraling and going on a difficult train of thought, I can just take a breath and, come back to awareness and try to work with that. You know, I Yeah, I think what you said about the SSRI is very interesting. Also, talk therapy has its limits. And I feel like this experience was many years of therapy in 3 days.
That's what I was about to ask you next. How many days you were there? And again, I want to be clear because we've been maybe sometimes struck with people that respond to, we're not saying forget, throw all the SSRIs in the garbage. I just need to do this almost as a PSA. I'm not saying any kind of talk therapy or CBT or what have you doesn't have its place or its value. However, when we're talking about, let's say, an acute situation where we need to have a big movement, psychedelic therapy has been shown to more aggressively, if you will, kind of get into the meat of everything. And I think another thing that happens in talk therapy is, especially if you're not in, let's say, a meditative or limbic state where you're not censoring, it's difficult not to be the narrator with a lot of bias. So you're telling your therapist what you think is the truth, but you may already also be a little bit subconsciously lying to yourself, and or you're framing it with all your trappings. What psychedelics, and I'm explaining this, for a listener, and I want you to verify if I say anything that doesn't feel true to you, that it can help you declutter those kinds of filters and layering thoughts around yourself so you can just be and then navigate from there versus, those pre-qualifiers and that kind of thing, because it's sort of a little bit of a deeper layer of self that's coming out to play. And there are some people say that the psychedelics go past the default network. There's different scientific perceptions on how these things and how the mycelium, not mycelia, the place, but the mycelium in the fungi, right, create new neural networks in military where I worked with PTSD, how that it not only has the experience itself, but it really reshapes and rewires how your brain processes information on those topics that you worked on. Do you feel any profound or different shifts in your thought processes or your automatic thought processes about some of those areas that you were working on since your experience?
Again, I think that I'm going to go back to the connectedness between the three generations, the intergenerational uh, trauma, because I don't see it separate anymore. I don't see it as my fault anymore. I see it as part of a larger uh, soul searching, karma releasing journey that just is. That the three of us and my grandmother, the four of us, the four generations, um, you're all working through our own karma, and I just want that same thing for my daughter, for her understanding. But I think that's really the primary thing that the big takeaway of the mycelia experience was just being really interconnected and interconnected with lots of things that aren't just breathing, or at least um, not just the animate and inanimate, the interconnectedness of all objects and things on earth.
Would you say that since that experience in Jamaica at Mycelia, you have adopted any different habits, whether they be daily or, lifestyle or anything like that? Like how is this sort of showing up in your daily life? Now you talked about mindfulness
Hmm.
as one of them, but are there
Mhm.
other things that you can speak to?
I've been working a lot. It's subtle and it works over time. Dimitri had said this, and it's very true. Some of the things that I've learned are still unfolding. I think one of the other ones is a very conscious awareness of how I'm communicating, and communicating in a calmer way, and really like understanding or listening to my own voice, my own voice tone, picking the time, working on controlling emotions and reactions. And those are very huge things for me.
Yeah, cohesion rather than reaction in a world that is instant and reactive in our daily life. Blip, 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 go, 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 go.
Well, one way I would protect myself, and I guess one thing I haven't said is the discovery of my own inner child, which I think has been facilitated. Uh, Thinking about that being that inner child and the work that needs to be done with that with her, just has helped me integrate a lot of different ways I may have reacted in the past. And instead of needing that anger as a defense mechanism, I can take a few moments to process it and breathe before responding. And I've been really practicing that, consciously practicing that.
So, two things you said, I want to just unpack a little further. And it's really important to me to break this down for anybody listening. And also because we use these interviews as content for our behavioral tools, right? So, we want to make sure that people can take this sharing of your beautiful and personal story into themselves. And I think one of the things you just said was about it's small and over time. I think just like anything, whether we're talking about the world of addiction, or just any kind of a behavior change where there's something that's been going on in a pattern and it feels really deeply rooted in yourself. And then you're saying, I want to change it. Most people think about, my diet starts Monday, or I'm quitting cigarettes cold turkey tomorrow, or whatever that is. And that data and science, in terms of Western behavioral science, tell us that those don't often work for most people anyway. So big dramatic, I'm going to be different, because I need to be, and that it's more about these small changes that unfold that you integrate with into your life so that they actually become part of your new operating system, because we're pretty complex, like you said, beyond just breathing differently or having, I'm going to have these XYZ rituals of gratitude or grounding or somatic breath work, or like you said, Kundalini yoga, or whatever those things are that you were already doing. But it's not like you came home from Jamaica and you're like, okay, I'm a new person and this is my new operating system and everything is going to be different. And it's a one fell swoop, that you basically are slowly unfolding and going towards these new ways of being, including, like you said, writing, something that you had always felt like you wanted to do more of, but now you had a symbol and a totem and a motivator to kind of push that you're at a retirement age, but you're not ready to retire yourself from participating in this life. So I think there's a lot there that I think a lot of people can take a page from your book, to have expectations around how they might shift themselves into a more easy, self loving, and loving others, and not necessarily angry with the world. At the same time, the inner child has been, well, portrayed in media in a caricature, cartoonish way, if you will, to really profound psychological work around measuring, understanding what does that mean for our psyche, our behavior, our patterns, our nervous system, our telomeres, how long we live. Everything is actually can be related to a lot of what maybe helped you, patterns or behaviors or thoughts that helped you when you were younger, and especially since you revealed there was trauma, they served you at that time. That anger or that defensiveness, you needed that, but now you don't. And what and to first even like address that and really unbundle from that, it's not as easy because it's quite ingrained. So I think those two things are quite profound, and I'm really glad you shared them. I just wanted to break them down a little further so that everyone can understand that this is deep work rooted in both Eastern and Western traditions, cultural and psychological and neuroscience, and they're biochemical as well. You get different chemical signaling when you adjust those things within yourself. Every time you take a little positive step forward, a dopamine response is going to be triggered. So it's a good thing on no matter what scientific lens you want to slice this through. This hits all the marks. If you want to take it, purely from a spiritual sense, that's one way in. And that's what's so beautiful about the way Mycelia approaches treatment, right? Because they do kind of address all the nodes on how you might want to understand where your starting point is, which starts with before you get there, what you experience there. The physical psychedelic journey is a part of it. The guiding work from the staff and the shamans and the teachers and the healers there, and then what you take forward with you in your life after you leave. So I really thank you for breaking all of that down for us. Is there anything else you'd love to share about, you know, I think we're allowed to say, like, why you would advocate for this for others?
I don't think there's any one way to reach full healing. I think there are multiple ways. I think that this is one way that isn't a profound experience, a beautiful experience. I would definitely consider doing it again. Um, but since there's pieces of me that's still working through this first experience, um, so I guess if one is on a path of self-learning, self-discovery, self-knowledge, I think experimenting under excellent guardianship is a good idea. It may be a good idea for you. I'm going to go back to feeling safe and knowing I was in really good hands allowed me to do that, be able to do the work. So I would suggest that if that's something you have been thinking about, uh, explore it a little more.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're going to make sure that we put Mycelia's information, maybe even direct Troy's information if we get permission to do that, in our show materials, promos, and all of that, so that anyone who is receiving this, can find out about how to go and have their own healing journey. But really, truly, you've given so much to so many young lives, Robyn, for over 3 decades, who may or may not have ever had an advocate. I don't know the situations, but I know from an observer lens, um, some parents are really instrumental in helping their child blossom and have the best life, and some parents are just maybe not as equipped because of whatever's going on in their life. So a lot of times, an educator like you, especially if someone has a learning disability, is really their lifeline. And so I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done for so many other people while you were carrying so much of your own trauma. And you see, I have to put on the smiling face, but it's hard because these are heavy topics. And I believe in this work that Troy and all the folks at Mycelia are doing. And I'm grateful that we got to know about you and that you were willing to share today. And just thank you. And I wish you just continued success and blessings on your journey.
Thank you. Thank you very much to you also.